Mr. Comptroller, pleasure to be with you this morning.
Great to be with you, Tyler.
Yeah, good to see you again in a different role. I guess I'm in a different role. You've had a number of successes in your stint as the Comptroller to date. What are you most proud of?
Well, let me first just say it's great to be back in Wyoming, and I thank the wonderful organizers for this great event for having me out here, and thanks for moderating this. So one of the things that I'm really proud for, and that's really enabled by the fact that we have, for the first time in a long time, again, a president and a Treasury of the Secretary who care deeply about ensuring the dynamism and innovation within our financial services system. And so with them at the helm, they've really enabled me to do my job, which is to deliver on many of the promises that they have made and that we are keeping at the OCC and have been keeping over the last 18 months and will continue to do, whether we're talking about as gatekeepers to the federal banking system through our chartering work and seeing and introducing new banks to the system and refreshing it, to defining the business of banking. That is also the OCC's role. We define what is the business of banking in this country. We've been doing that for 163 years. I will tell all of you right now, and those of you who might be watching, that crypto is part of the business of banking. And we have been making sure that that is the case through our actions, both on the chartering front and through legal interpretations.
That's a really interesting point. Crypto being a part of the business of banking. Just from an internal perspective, can you unpack a little bit about the supervisory side of things in terms of how the personnel and how the agency itself is sort of refreshing its view on digital asset policy and sort of the functional technology?
So I think that really manifests in a number of different ways. So as many of you in this room and watching probably know, during the first Trump administration, the OCC took the lead on the digital asset front, at least among the federal banking agencies, and issued a series of legal opinions acknowledging the legal permissibility of a number of digital asset-related activities, including the use of distributed ledger technology to facilitate financial intermediation services. So we have been building on that since I got back as Comptroller this time, about 13 months ago, and really making sure that we are embedding that too on the supervisory level and doing a lot of work, learning from, again, many of the people in this room and many of those watching, how best we can integrate digital asset activities as well as blockchain technology into the banking system.
Do you view it as a part of the arc of technological innovation? Like, obviously, the business of banking has changed quite significantly through time. And I can't recount sort of how many specific banks are in the United States, but that has changed over time, and so has the technology that banks use. Where do you see the puck going in 5 years from here?
Well, so let me maybe answer that question by looking at it through first the lens of our chartering activities. So since President Trump took office, so over the last 18 or so months, we have received 40 applications for new bank charters in this country. Over half of those bank charters and the business plans for those bank charters involve some form of digital asset activity. So that's 23 out of 40. That's an 8-fold increase from the 4 years of the Biden administration. So that tells you about where the puck is going. We are now seeing, when I look out further to the pipeline of potential applicants for bank charters, it is becoming ordinary course to involve and integrate payment stablecoins, et cetera, in the business plans that we are now seeing presented to the OCC for consideration. So that gives me some indication of where the system is going over time. And I would note, importantly, my job is not about incumbent protection. My job is about the integrity of the banking system as a whole and making sure that it remains relevant over time. The OCC in particular has been around for 163 years. We're the oldest regulator in this country, period. And so we have seen a lot of changes in the very old business of banking over those 163 years. And it would be extremely myopic on our perspective, from our perspective, if we did not acknowledge and give banks the tools they need, including the new technologies they need, to continue to remain relevant and deliver services to their customers and meet the changing needs of the markets that they serve, whether at the largest bank level or the small community banks that drive innovation across this country and support ag lending, small business lending, and CRA lending.
Very interesting. I guess this is my own opinion. I think a lot of people held this view that regulators in Washington, whether it was the OCC, the FDIC, the Fed, or my former employer, the Treasury Department, that there was a lot of disdain or dislike for digital assets that sort of existed in the government. And I always felt that was slightly a misnomer. There was just sort of a policy direction from the top that didn't like the space and didn't want to incubate it throughout our financial institutions. So I never experienced that at the Treasury Department. I always thought people were interested in the technology. They just didn't have as much experience as many of the people in the room. From your own experience at the OCC, do you get that same impression, or how are your feelings about sort of the technical know-how within the building?
Well, we're getting there. I appreciate your perspective, and I would say there was some truth to that perspective in the last administration. Right, there was a strategy taken of risk elimination with respect to crypto and trying to shield the banking system from crypto activities, digital asset activities, and blockchain technology. I think that was extremely short-sighted, as well as just not in the interest of the banking system. So because of that approach that was taken in the last administration, we at the OCC have been playing catch-up, and we should have been learning over those last 4 years, but instead we're now playing a bit of catch-up. But with help from, again, many of you in this room and beyond, we have been getting to the point where I think we need to be, and we, at the supervisory level, as well as at the regulatory level and on the charting level too, have I think been providing ample evidence that we get it. And again, at the highest levels of this administration, obviously starting with the president, who sets the tone at the top, and is setting the tone literally today by having a White House summit on digital asset technology right now. That percolates down to certainly all of us at the OCC and beyond.
Let's talk a little bit about Genius. And obviously it's been a little over a year since the law was signed. Where's the OCC at in terms of its process? You guys have taken a number of formal agency steps to do notices of proposed rulemaking. Where do things stand now, and what's ahead?
So I'm very proud of the efforts of the OCC team on this. We were working on the rule even before the president actually signed the law into, the bill into law. We will have a final rule out by November. So we are working with great speed here. We very much appreciate the comments that we received on our proposal, including probably from many in this room and many of you watching online. We heard you, and we will make changes and have made changes accordingly in the final rule to reflect some of the comments that you all helpfully provided. So we are very intent on moving quickly and getting a final rule out by November so that we will be able to start processing applications with the new year. We have also, in parallel to crafting the regulatory framework for those payment stablecoin issuers within our jurisdiction, have also been very busily designing the supervisory framework as well, and we've been making great progress on that front too.
That's breaking news, I think, that you'll be ready to go well before the January 18th of 2027 sort of timeline of when the act becomes effective.
We will certainly have a final rule out well before then. We'll be ready to process applications at that time. So the one thing I will add too is that obviously we are witnessing the birth of a new industry in the form of payment stablecoins. We at the OCC, probably like everyone else, cannot predict with certainty what the future will hold. We're very excited about the prospect of payment stablecoins and our role in that regulatory and supervisory landscape. It's actually brings us kind of back to our original mission back in the 1860s when we were created, which is ensuring that the reserve assets backing then national bank issued notes were of the same level of quality. That's exactly analogous to what Congress has tasked us with doing with respect to payment stablecoins. But we will, of course, reassess as we get more experience and as the payment stablecoin market grows. Again, consistent with the president's leadership across the board on onshoring innovation and working closely with our colleagues at the Treasury Department and obviously following the Secretary's lead over there.
Let's talk a little bit about clarity and sort of the intersection with Genius. Like, there's been quite a bit of consternation in Washington over the yield and rewards debate, and that was litigated within the Genius Act relative to the issuers. That debate has sort of expanded into the Clarity Act with the yield and rewards and permissible activities relative to third-party intermediaries. How do you think about this issue? What is your message to the banks and also to the digital asset intermediaries?
Look, we appreciate that there is a pending legislative process unfolding right now. We don't know if or when or what may be the end result of that process, the Clarity Act, that is. What we have is the Genius Act. That's been law for over a year now, and we need to execute on that. So from the OCC's perspective, from my perspective, that question was addressed in law, in the Genius Act, and that is what we are intent on implementing.
So you guys are going to stay focused on the Genius Act, implementing. If Congress makes a decision that's separate, you'll have to consider that.
Of course. I mean, we just can't. Congress gave us an instruction. We need to carry it out. We need to carry it out expeditiously. We have timelines we need to meet. I can't predict what will happen, so we need to act on what we have in front of us and what the statutory mandate is.
One of the things that I thought was interesting in the Clarity Act was the bank permissibility section. In other words, how banks engage with digital asset service providers, intermediaries, much like the Bank Service Company Act that sort of gives the ability for the regulators to supervise or oversee how banks relate to different third parties. How do you think about that within the Clarity Act? Excuse me. That within the Clarity Act, and whether or not it opens up even more possibilities for regulated institutions to interact with different constituent pieces of the digital asset economy?
Well, I think what I would encourage people within this room and beyond to do is, if you have questions around legal permissibility from the banking perspective, as opposed to from the market regulatory perspective, from the banking perspective, we are happy to help you with those. So please let our legal team and our supervisory team know if you have questions about that type of thing. We're happy to weigh in on those things. Again, we are following under the leadership of the president and the Treasury Secretary on this, and we want to make sure that we are welcoming and embracing innovative activities. If these activities are legally permissible or new technologies are legally permissible, we want to make sure that we are working with those banks who are interested in engaging in those technologies or new activities to ensure they are doing it in a safe and sound manner. That's in stark contrast to the prior administration, where essentially, even though these activities were legally permissible, the OCC sadly was not willing to work with banks to find ways to engage in them in a safe and sound manner. So we're willing to take on that burden ourselves. We recognize that's a shared burden with those banks that are actually interested in these.
And there was a cloud of sort of reputation risk associated with it, even though it was legally permissible.
Right. Well, we've excised that from we and the FDIC have excised that from our lexicon.
I know we're over time, but two last questions. What keeps you up at night, and what are you most excited about?
What keeps me up at night is the possibility that I won't have enough people at the OCC who stand up and hear what I'm saying and respond to it with enthusiasm and vigor. But 13 months in, I'm finding that there are a lot of folks at the OCC who are very excited about the innovation and dynamism that needs to occur within the financial services system and specifically the banking system, and that the OCC for 163 years has always been about and will continue to be about as long as I'm there. So that concern of the declining relevance of the banking system is abated because of the behavior I'm seeing at the OCC from a lot of wonderful career staff, as well as from all of you in this room and beyond. So that was the thing that kept me up at night. What I'm most excited about is really delivering on the promise that in the vision that the President and the Treasury Secretary have set out. We have the tools to do so. We have, I think, as Comptroller, I have a lot more tools available to me than past past Comptrollers have had. The Genius Act is exceedingly exciting for us because, again, it brings us back to the future of doing what we were doing back in the 1860s when we were first created. So those are the things that keep me motivated on a daily basis.
Well, as they say, the future is now. Mr. Comptroller, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.